Okay, let's graph a couple of absolute value equations. I think this one kind of messes people up, and I think it's partly because they know that they have to plot points to sketch the graph, but they're not sure which points to plot, and sometimes choosing the wrong points can mislead you into thinking that you have a straight line. And an absolute value equation is never a straight line. It's always a V, or an upside down V. And the corner of the V is called the vertex. And so it's really important that you first find that vertex, and then you find just two more points, one on the left of the vertex and one on the right. And then that will ensure that you get the entire V, and you aren't tricked into thinking you have a straight line. Because if you just choose numbers or points on the left of the vertex, you'll plot those points and think that you have a straight line. So, how do you find the vertex of an absolute value equation? Well, the vertex is always going to have an x-coordinate that makes the inside of the absolute value equal to 0. So I mean that whatever's inside the absolute value, we want to know what value of that variable will make the inside 0. Well, this one, it's kind of obvious. All we have inside is x, and so the only thing that can make the inside 0 is x equals 0. So our vertex is going to be at x equals 0. So that means the vertex has x coordinate 0. We still have to find the y coordinate. So now, once we know where the vertex is, once we know the x coordinate of the vertex, we're going to start setting up a table of values. So my table, I'm going to have 3 columns. I'm going to have an x column. I'll have a y column. So I'm using the whole equation to find the y coordinates. And then the last column isn't necessary, but just to make it clear what we're doing, in my last column, I'm just going to put it all together and write down the ordered pairs of the points that I'm finding. So remember, we only need 3 points, and the first point we're going to find is the vertex. And we know the x-coordinate of the vertex is, in this case, x equals 0. So we're going to use 2 other x-coordinates. We're going to pick a number just below 0 and a number just above. So one number on the left, one number on the right. On the left of 0, I'm going to use x equals -1. I could use any negative number, anything on the left. I could have chosen x equals -15, but I'm going to choose something relatively small. So x equals -1 is on the left, and on the right, I'm going to use x equals +1. So now let's find their y coordinates. So let's start with the vertex. So what we do is we take the x and we plug it into the equation. So y equals -2 times the absolute value of 0 plus 4. The absolute value of 0 is 0. So what we have is -2 times 0 plus 4. -2 times 0 is just 0. So our y coordinate is 0 plus 4, or just 4. So that means our ordered pair for that point is 0, 4. So let's do the same thing for x equals -1. So we get y equals -2 times the absolute value of -1 plus 4. The absolute value of -1 is +1. So we get -2 times +1 plus 4. -2 times +1 is just -2. So -2 plus 4 is +2. So our coordinates are -1, +2. And then for the last point, x equals +1, let's do the same thing. We get y equals -2 times the absolute value of +1 plus 4. The absolute value of +1 is, again, +1. So we get -2 times 1 plus 4 again. So those coordinates are +1, +2. So let's put it all together. Let's plot the 3 points. So they're my axes. The vertex is at 0, 4, so that means horizontal, I'm not going right or left, the horizontal distance is 0, and I'm going to go up 4 units, starting at the origin, up 4 units. So I get right there. And notice I don't have to write tick marks. When you're not using graph paper, it's not necessary to write all those tick marks as long as you label the points. So there's the point 0, 4. So now the point -1, +2, I'm going to go start at the origin, go left 1 unit, and then go up 2. So right about there, and I'm just labeling that point. And then the last point is +1, +2, so I go to the right 1 and up 2, and I land here. And then I put it all together, I just connect the dots. Boom, boom, there's my graph. It's an upside down V. And the vertex is that highest point. All right, let's do one more, slightly more complicated, but it's the same idea. So we're going to graph y equals -3 times the absolute value of x plus 5. So once again, we're going to start by finding the vertex. We look at the inside of the absolute value. We say what value of x will make that entire inside equal to 0. And so that means the vertex is going to happen at or when x plus 5 is 0. So solving that equation for x, I just subtract 5 from both sides, and I get x equals -5. So that's going to be the vertex, the x-coordinate of the vertex. So let's do our table of values, and I'm just going to use 2 columns this time. I don't need the third column. I'm just going to plug in x-coordinates and find the y-coordinates, and then I'll plot those 3 points. So the first x-coordinate we're going to use is -5. And now I want to pick one number less than -5. So let's use -6. That's less than -5. And then for one number bigger than -5, I'm going to use -4. So let's plug in -5 to get the y-coordinate. We get y equals -3 times the absolute value of -5 plus 5. And remember, we knew that the inside of the absolute value was going to be 0. So we have -3 times the absolute value of 0. Well, that's just -3 times 0. So that y-coordinate is just 0. So what about, well, let's plot that point. Let's just start plotting. So here are my axes. So I'm going to plot the point -5, 0. So x equals -5 means I'm moving to the, start at the origin, move to the left 5 units. And then the y-coordinate is 0 means that I don't go up or down. So I'm just sitting right there on the x-axis. That's the point, -5, 0. All right, so let's find the one on the left. So let's plug in -6. So we have y equals -3 times the absolute value of -6 plus 5. So -6 plus 5 is -1. The absolute value of -1 is +1. So that's really -3 times +1. So that means the y-coordinate is -3. So let's plot that. So I went back 6 units, so that's to the left 6, and then I went down 3 units. And I labeled the points so I didn't have to put tick marks on my axes. And let's do the last one. The x-coordinate was -4, so the y-coordinate is -3 times the absolute value of -4 plus 5. -4 plus 5 is +1, and the absolute value of +1 is just 1. So we have -3 times 1 again, which is -3. And so that point is x-coordinate -4, so go to the left 4 and down 3. And connect those dots, and there's my graph. Okay, So once again, we have an upside down V. So just a little clue about that. Notice in both of these equations, in front of the absolute value, we had a negative number. In the first equation, we had a -2. In the second equation, we had a -3. Because that number in front of the absolute value was negative, that's the clue that we're going to be pointing down, that our V is upside down, and the vertex is actually the highest point. If we had a positive number in front of the absolute value, then the vertex would be the lowest point, and our graph would be going up, opening upward. Okay, so you'll get some practice, and you'll probably have to do one of these on your exam coming up. All right, have fun.